everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting, thank you, welcome. My name is Rachel Clemens, and I cover true crime stories that I find interesting and or need additional coverage. If that's something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you know every time that I post. Now this week's case, I do have to give a disclaimer at the beginning. We will be discussing domestic abuse that involves children and also women. So if that's something that triggers you, you don't care for, you may want to skip this week's video. If not, carry on. For this week's case, we're going to be discussing Judith Barsi, which would be better known as the voice of Ducky from The Land Before Time, and also Anne-Marie from All Dogs Go to Heaven. But before we get into Judith, we have to discuss her parents. Both of Judith's parents were actually Hungarians that fled from Hungary after the 1956 Soviet occupation, and they both fled separately. They both had completely different upbringings when they were in Hungary, and their childhoods were completely different. Let me explain. Maria was born into what would be considered wealth. She was born into a lot of money. She had a very comfortable childhood, a very happy and warm childhood, and it was wonderful. The same cannot be said for Joseph, however. Joseph and his family were kind of on the poor side. They didn't live in a very good neighborhood. Joseph was actually tormented at school by bullies. You know, they were bullying him for being poor. They were also bullying him for his father not being around. I mean, could you imagine having people at school make fun of you for not having a father? That's absolutely terrible. From that point moving forward, Joseph really struggled with his self-esteem. And naturally, he took up the habit of drinking to cope with his low self-esteem. Now, when Joseph fled Hungary, he actually did quite a bit of traveling. He leaves Hungary, he goes to France, he went to New York after that, and then he went to Arizona, and he finally ended up in Los Angeles. Maria was actually a waitress at a bar at this point in time in Los Angeles. And this bar was specifically known for immigrants, and specifically Hungarian immigrants. At the time, Maria was single, and she was really wishing at the time that she could start a family and really start settling down and digging into her life. She enjoyed her job, and she enjoyed getting to know the regulars that came in, and she just enjoyed what she did. Now, one day a man came in the bar, one that she did not recognize. And this man was loud and proud and confident. He was also a native to Hungary. This man was Judith Barsi. Joseph was loud, he was slinging his money, paying for drinks, and every single drink that he was paying for, he paid for it with a $100 bill, flaunting his money and giving everybody the impression that he was actually a very wealthy man. And would you know it, Maria and Joseph hit it off and they fell in love. Joseph and Maria ended up getting married in 1977, and extremely shortly after the wedding, Maria found out that she was expecting. And June 6th, 1978, Judith Eva Barsi was born. She was their only child, and Maria was absolutely thrilled to have a daughter. You know, like a little life-size doll that she could dress up and do girl things with and really have that bond with her daughter. She was over the moon. Now, a note to make is when I say that Judith was their only child, that is correct, but that is the only child that Maria and Joseph shared. Prior to Maria, Joseph had been married. In his previous marriage, he had had 2 children, and at this point in time, they were out of state, so, you know, it doesn't affect the story quite much at this point in time, but it will come up later. Now, with that being said, Judith was their absolute pride and joy. She was extremely known for her kindness. She was such a sweet little girl. Judith's neighbors would actually describe her as having the manners of an angel. And honestly, when I read about Judith and read about her and get to know her a little bit, the phrase sugar and spice and everything nice seems to really truly fit to Judith. Like she was just the embodiment of sugar and spice and everything nice. A few things about Judith, so you can get to know her a little bit as well, was she loved Cabbage Patch dolls and she loved sunflowers. Her favorite colors were pink and purple. She loved Care Bears and she loved the Smurfs as well. And holy cannoli, this girl loved playing outside. She wanted to be in the sun 24/7. And living in LA, she had the perfect spot for it. Now, in the first half of her life, the Barsis lived in a small apartment across town, and they eventually moved up and got their own 3-bedroom house. And Judith, of course, made friends with all the other kids in the neighborhood. Judith's mother had a passion she really wanted to, at some point in her life, become an actress and become famous, really just wanted to be famous in general. Maria had loved the idea of the Hollywood lifestyle and the glamour of all of it. And she really dreamed of, at one point in her life, achieving those goals. But at this point in time, she kind of accepted that, now she has a child, she's married, she's settled down. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for her to pursue, a dream like that all on her own when now she has so many more responsibilities. So she kind of accepted that her time has come and gone and put her focus back into her family. Joseph was very clear about his expectations for Maria as a mother. He wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom and keep her focus there and kind of be a housewife, which did not bother Maria whatsoever. At this point in time in her life, she would much rather be home with her daughter, raising her and spending that time with her, as opposed to working full-time and paying someone else to take care of your child like everybody else in this new day and age. Maria thought to herself, she had a really good opportunity at this point in time to take the time that she has with her daughter at home and kind of, train her into becoming an actress early on. And around the age of 5, Maria actually began giving Judith acting lessons, singing lessons, dancing lessons, all on her own, just trying to get her kind of acclimated to the Hollywood starlight position that she so wanted for her daughter. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that don't take this as like Maria was forcing her daughter into something she wasn't interested in already. Judith had a natural knack for acting and for taking direction and really understanding what was needed of her in a certain scene. So it was only natural that Maria would help her and kind of coach her through that and prep her to begin her career. Of course, there were the haters, people telling Maria, there's absolutely no way that, Judith is going to make it. The odds of that happening and her making a real break into Hollywood is not realistic. You really need to calm down with that. It's just never going to happen. But Maria saw something super special in her daughter, Judith, and she was definitely not wrong. Judith got her break when she was 5 years old. It was a coincidental fate of things. Judith and her family were actually at the skating rink, and as fate would have it, there was a TV crew there filming a commercial. And of course, the casting director for this crew happened to look over and saw Judith and immediately knew that she was perfect for another upcoming commercial. So of course the casting director approached Maria and Judith and introduced herself. They got Judith an agent almost immediately. From this, Judith was cast in a commercial for Donald Duck orange juice. And she had done such an amazing job that they actually kept her on. And she had done multiple commercials, a string of commercials for the same brand. And that string of commercials was exactly what Judith needed to really break into the Hollywood scene. From this, little Judith was able to land over 70 different roles over the course of her career. They involved commercials, TV shows, movies, you name it, she was in them. And by the time Judith was 7 years old, she was making over $100,000 a year for her family. And that actually is the exact reason as to why her family was able to move out of the small apartment into their own home, a new 3-bedroom home in Los Angeles. Judith was so happy. She enjoyed doing this. She enjoyed working with the crews. She enjoyed being filmed. She was having a great time. Maria was happy because she finally got to be that, actress's mom. that got to take her to all the things. And with every single kind of filming she had to do, she was there and she loved it. Joseph was happy because, his whole family was happy. They're making money. They were able to move up and get into a nice home. Everybody was happy. Now, Judith was in shows that you may remember, such as Twilight Zone, Punky Brewster, Growing Pains, Cagney and Lacey, you name it. She was in a ton of stuff. I could sit here and list off a million. More widely known role that she was in was when she played Thea Brody in Jaws: The Revenge. And of course, her voice acting that she did for The Land of Time as Ducky. And she was also the voice actor for the role of Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Between her films, she was also doing commercials for McDonald's, Lay's, and many, many, many other very large brands. So her face was out there. Needless to say, Judith was finding true success in acting. And her mother, Maria, were traveling the world, going to all these different filming locations, and just enjoying each other and bonding over this experience together. Now, unfortunately, this is about the point that Joseph begins to get a little resentful almost and jealous of his daughter and her success. I mean, having a 6, 7, 8-year-old make way more money than what you could possibly make in your entire career in what you're doing apparently took a toll on top of his already low self-confidence. Now, Joseph's resentment and bitterness to the whole situation with his daughter just slowly over time began to grow and began to really start to be prominent to the point that the people around him can tell, such as Maria and Judith. It starts off, with little snide comments that he would just jab in here and there, and then it turned into, him actually being genuinely mean to his own daughter. A neighbor would recall a story seeing Joseph come storming out of the house to find Judith outside playing with a kite. He snatched the kite. Judith starts crying. And so he says, haha, she's a brat. Takes the kite and just breaks it into pieces right in front of her to show her that she is a spoiled brat. What father does that? As I am sure you all can kind of call it, at this point, Joseph's drinking really started to get out of hand to the point that he was arrested on multiple occasions for driving under the influence. He would get home from the bars and take his bitterness and resentment out on Maria and Judith, mainly Maria though at this point. Now, this was the first time that Maria really saw him acting like this, to where he was extremely aggressive, very loud, and just very, in general, scary to be around. Now, do you remember that note that I made earlier about how Joseph had been married prior to this? Well, when he fled Hungary, his first stop was France. And this is where he met his first wife, Clara. And she was also another Hungarian that had also fled. They ended up moving to New York together and beginning a whole absolutely new life together. They had 2 children, and of course, over time, their relationship as well began to become abusive. He started with the snide comments and then started becoming aggressive, and then it turned into physical abuse at that point, which would only worsen when he would drink. Now, the point in time in which Joseph's focus of abuse turned from Clara to the children, that was the point in time that Clara said absolutely not. She packed her children up and they moved to Arizona to get away from Joseph. Of course, Joseph follows, begging for forgiveness, telling her that he will quit drinking and he just wants a new chance. Clara knew better. She was not about to risk her children, putting her children in any kind of situation that would potentially result in an abusive relationship again. She said absolutely not. Joseph just realized that she's not going to give him another chance, and he dropped everything and moved to Los Angeles, trying to start brand new. Nobody's going to know him. He can have a whole brand new life and a new identity. And that, of course, is where he met Maria. Over time, the abuse that Joseph was giving Judith and Maria accelerated and became much more serious. There was a time that even Joseph, he took Maria into the garage and he was showing her these cans that were full of gasoline that he slowly collected over time, which doesn't make sense to me, but he did. Collected all these cans of gasoline and showed Maria and he said to her, "If you ever try and leave me, I will burn this entire house down with all three of us in it." Of course, this lowlife was just trying to scare Maria into not leaving him because he knew he was a POS and nobody would want him after that. Okay. Now, Maria was not shy with her friends and family as to exactly what was going on and what was being said by Joseph. She made sure to share. In fact, on Judith's 8th birthday, they had a birthday party for her at the bowling alley. And all of little Judith's friends were there and their moms were there. Those moms kind of looked around and noticed that Joseph wasn't there, so they approached Maria and said, "Hey, what's going on with Joseph? Why is he not here?" Well, Maria informed them that Joseph decided that he would much rather just stay home and get drunk. Classy Joseph. Now, it was December 1986. Judith was 8 years old at this point in time. This was finally the first time that Maria had made a police report. Once the police arrived, Maria decided to drop the charges, drop any of it, and stated that, they'd be fine and she would just figure things out on their own. After the incident, Joseph actually quit drinking, which you would think that would kind of clear up everything. Weirdly enough, the abuse actually only progressed and continued to get worse and worse. But even with the chaotic home, Judith was going to school every single day and still killing it in her career. And she was actually going to a public school at the time because she wanted to try and keep some kind of normalcy to her life. And she was a very happy child, very happy pictures she would always draw of her and her mother. Nobody suspected anything. However, over time, Judith's friends did begin to kind of notice, because Judith, not knowing any better, she would say, what was going on at home. And she would say things to the matter of, Daddy yells a lot and he will sometimes throw things at her and Maria. And in fact, it was pots and pans that were thrown at her and Maria one time. And Judith ended up with a bloody nose because of it. So all these stories that Judith was relaying to her friends about her father and the things that he would say kind of really scared her friends. They were terrified of Joseph to the point that they didn't want to come over and see Judith could come out and play. They didn't want to knock on the door in fear of him answering, and they just didn't want anything to do with it. So nobody would ever go over there and play. Of course, as time went on, the physical abuse and, just all the abuse in general began to shift its focus more and more onto Judith. So much so that there was an incident that Joseph was mad at Judith about something and literally picked her up by her ponytail and slammed her onto the ground, resulting in another bloody nose. Joseph, being the upstanding father that he is, he made sure to buy Judith a pink TV for her room in an effort to try and make up for what he did to her. In 1987, Judith was ecstatic. This girl was 9 years old and she was about to leave to go to the Bahamas to go film Jaws: The Revenge. How cool is that? She's in her room packing, she's got all of her favorite clothes going in, and she is ecstatic. Her and her mom are going together. Joseph comes barging into the room and shuts the door behind him. He goes up behind Judith and puts a knife to her neck and tells her this: "If you and your mother do not come back after you're done filming, I'll slit your throat." So Judith and Maria arrive in the Bahamas, and keep in mind, Judith is 9 years old at this point in time, so they do have a different kind of regulation on to how many hours a day that she can film. So she was only really filming for about 2 to 3 hours a day. The rest of the time, her and her mom, they would visit the private beach that was set aside for the cast and crew and spend a lot of their time there. Maria, being a stay-at-home mom, didn't really get out very often, so she wasn't really socializing with a bunch of other women usually, and so she was eating this up. She was able to get along and meet some new people and just had a great time meeting all these women. Maria really began to open up to these other women and kind of voice her concerns and tell them the things that Joseph had said and done and how terrified she really was to go back home to him. She was in fear of her life at this point. These other women showed obvious concern for the abuse and the aggression that Joseph was showing her and her family. And they were like, don't go back. Just go somewhere else, or you can come stay over here, just definitely don't go back. Maria would say, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna stick to my guns this time, and I'm just not gonna do it. But the next day, Maria would be back at it like she hit the reset button that morning, and well, I'm going back to Joseph, and it's gonna be so scary, and I don't know what to do. And again, the women would remind her, no, you have to think of Judith's safety at this point in time. You can't go back to that. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm going to stick to my guns this time, and I'm not going to go back. And again, this cycle would continue to repeat itself on a daily basis. Over, the course of days, weeks, these women started kind of one year out the other, because every day it was the same thing. She would just be going back to him. What they were saying and showing concern for wasn't reaching her. One woman actually described it as almost like a boy who cried wolf type of situation, to where you hear it so many times, and after so many chances and so many shows of support for her to just continue to act like she has to go back to him, they just quit trying and almost quit listening to her at some point. The saddest part, I think, of the story is that they didn't really realize or know just how serious the situation would turn. Once the filming for Jaws was over, Maria actually took Judith and went to Maria's brother's house. And he lived in New York at the time. And I don't even think at this point in time her brother had met Judith yet at all. So this was kind of a special visit. But they took time there. They were there for a few days before, of course, Joseph found out. Joseph called the house that they were staying at and asked if he could speak with Judith. And little beautiful Judith got on the phone. And her dad asked her a question and said, "Do you remember what I told you before you left for your filming?" And Judith, of course, was in a panic. And she got off the phone and ran to the other room and told her mom what actually had happened before they even left for the filming. As you can imagine, the next day, Judith and Maria were back on a plane headed back to Los Angeles. Now, to add a little bit more context to the story, and if Joseph was not a big enough pig yet or not, he had full-blown relationships going on at this point in time on the side. His side girls. He was taking them on dates. He was buying them gifts. Full-blown relationships on the side. But he absolutely refused to allow Maria to leave him. And Maria really felt forced to stay in this loveless marriage. But Maria thought that she would be, clever, and she was going to try and get Joseph to actually leave her. Because he already had relationships working outside of their marriage, if she could just give him a little bit more of a push out the door, maybe he'll go on his own accord. Her thought process of how to make that happen was she just stopped taking care of herself. She stopped picking up around the house. She stopped cleaning. She stopped everything. She wanted to make the house as disgusting as possible to where he would not want to be there. Now, Maria's little plan backfired and did not work. The neighbors at this point in time kind of knew what was going on. Maria was talking to them as well, and they did offer Maria and Judith a place to stay if she wanted to kind of gather her stuff, get money together to where they can move out and move away and have their own life. Gave them refuge. And Maria declined because she just wanted to stay. She wanted to make it work. Through all of this, as the abuse began to progress and get more and more severe, it did begin to affect Judith. She began to gain weight. She began to pull out her eyelashes. She was even pulling out the whiskers off of her cat. While Judith was actually auditioning for the movie All Dogs Go to Heaven. And I think it was a singing audition that just out of nowhere, she just broke down and was bawling, hysterical. Nobody could, really understand what she was trying to say. If anything, it came on out of nowhere. This concerned Judith's agent. She was really concerned at this point because she also noticed, the weight gain and the pulling the eyelashes out. Then this outburst out of nowhere. So she, in fact, took Judith to a child psychologist to kind of get her checked out and see what was going on with her. And she had met with the child psychologist for maybe an hour. And the psychologist said she is definitely experiencing very severe physical and psychological abuse at home. She had to get CPS involved, or Child Protective Services involved in this case. CPS sat down with Maria to ask her, what's going on? We have these reports and allegations. And Maria told them everything. But she also followed it up with, I've been saving money, and I've in fact been renting an apartment for about a week or two. My plan is to start moving slowly to where Joseph doesn't know and doesn't notice, and we can get out of here scot-free. CPS was like, oh, okay, cool. And they dropped the case. That's exactly what happens. Maria begins to slowly move stuff, from their family home to the new apartment, slowly, 1 or 2 boxes at a time, in order to not alert Joseph to her plan. July 10th, 1988, Maria is taking boxes over to the apartment, as usual. She's loading them into the apartment one at a time, and she comes out, and there's Joseph. He had actually followed her there. This is when Joseph confronts her and says, what is this? What is this? And she was able to actually calm him down. And she was like, oh, no, I'm just helping a friend move. She had left these boxes in my car for quite a while, and I was just dropping them off. So that is all that this is. Joseph bought it and was like, oh, okay, and let it go. But from there on, Maria knew that if her and Judith actually had gone missing, later on, Joseph knew where this apartment was at this point in time. And he would probably suspect, and he would go right back to there and find them. Judith had been staying with some family friends frequently at this point in time. And they were okay with it because they knew the situation of what was going on. So they didn't really mind her spending that much time there. But while she was there, she was definitely vocalizing her concerns about going home. She had made a comment to these family friends stating that, Daddy threatens to kill Mommy all the time. The family friends, as many years as this had gone on, they took it as empty threats. They were like, oh yeah, that's Joseph. Now, Judith, her final acting role was actually as Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. July 25th, 1988, Judith's neighbors saw her outside on her pink little bike playing, and she had played 4 hours that day. Maria ended up coming out and telling her it was time to eat. They came inside, had dinner. Maria put Judith to bed, and of course, shortly after that, she went to bed herself and left Joseph awake and in his own little man stuff so that he could continue drinking, which was a usual occurrence most evenings. Joseph waits to make sure that Maria and Judith are fully well asleep and not going to wake. He goes to his closet and pulls out the .32 caliber pistol. He takes his pistol and makes his way back to Judith's room. And while sweet little Judith was sleeping so well that evening, her father, Joseph, took his .32 caliber pistol and pointed it directly at her head and fired off a shot. That shot ended up waking up Maria from her sleep. From what we can understand, she came running out of her room, ended up meeting Joseph in the hallway as he was heading towards her room as well. There was a struggle in the hallway. He ended up knocking her down to the ground and also pointing the gun at her head and firing off a shot as well. After that, Joseph left the bodies right where they were at. The next morning, Judith actually had a recording session she was supposed to do for All Dogs Go to Heaven, and she didn't show. So her agent, of course, was concerned. Her agent called the Barsi house. Joseph picked up. He made sure to let her know that the girls, Maria and Judith, ended up taking off that morning. They were picked up by a black car, and he was not sure as to where they had gone for the day. Joseph spent the 2 days after the murders really just going about his normal, everyday business, had no regard whatsoever for the 2 bodies that were laying in his house, which I find absolutely disturbing. July 27th, 1988, 2 days after the murder, the Barsi neighbors heard a giant explosion from the Barsi home. They ended up calling the police and reporting it immediately, and after calling the police, she actually saw smoke coming from the house. So the fire department actually showed up, ended up putting the fire out, and went inside to investigate. When the fire department went inside to investigate, they had found 3 bodies, one being Judith, 10 years old, Maria, 48 years old, and Joseph, 55 years old. Gas had been used to start the fires, and it looked like it had started at Judith. All the bodies were doused in gasoline. The explosion that the neighbor had heard was actually, in fact, a gunshot, and that was Joseph using the same .32 caliber pistol to take his life. News broke, and it was everywhere. People were devastated to hear this news because not only was it sad, but it was extremely eerie due to the fact that the first TV show that Judith had starred in was called Fatal Vision. And it was based off of a true story of a man who killed his pregnant wife and his 2 daughters. And Judith played one of his daughters. Judith and Maria actually spent 16 years after that without a headstone, without any kind of gravestone whatsoever. And in 2004, a bunch of true crime enthusiasts actually crowdfunded and was able to purchase gravestones and headstones for them. So that's absolutely amazing. So that is today's story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave me your thoughts down below. This is an absolutely tragic, sad story, and one that I hadn't heard a lot of, but I definitely enjoyed The Land Before Time and the All Dogs Go to Heaven. It kind of hit a little bit home as to how sad this story really is. So leave me your thoughts down below. I appreciate you guys stopping by, and we'll see you next time. Bye.